master the business of speaking with your hosts, Taylor and Austin. You're listening to Technically Speaking.
Welcome to another episode of Technically Speaking. We're your hosts, Taylor and Austin, and today we are talking about vision. And we're talking about vision with the premise that execution needs to back your vision in order to actually get anything done. And we're really talking about where the line in the sand between vision and execution actually is. How do we set a good vision? How do we live by it? How do we find purpose in it? And more importantly, how do we actually execute on that? And today's guest, we decided to bring on Robert Reed, a marketing expert who's used vision in everything he's done throughout his life to build the business of his dreams. He shares with us how vision has inspired his marketing strategies all the way through growing his business and navigating everything that life has to throw at us. A truly inspirational person, Robert talks with us about how he's leveraged vision in order to execute better in his life and help develop the business of his dreams. As always, we hope you like this one, and don't forget to stick around until the end for some awesome resources. And we are live. Robert, man, welcome to the show. It is such a pleasure to have you here today.
Taylor, you already know, man. It's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. We met a little while back and we just like had a networking call or something like that. And you really stuck in my head for a long time there. You inspired me. And so I'm excited that you're here, and I'm sure you're going to inspire a lot of our listeners today.
Oh, appreciate it, man. You know, it's one of those conversations that just happened. Didn't expect it to go that way, but there's nothing when you have that authentic conversation, man, that right there is the bond. So yeah, it was great meeting you.
For sure.
Yeah. So, man, we'd love to kick off these episodes with your background. I mean, fill us in. So who are you? How'd you get into the speaking space? What is your journey like? Yeah. How'd we end up on this call nonetheless?
Well, so I grew up in Tacoma, Washington, and then I settled in Tucson, Arizona when I was 18 years old, went to U of A, bear down. And U of A, they took my money for about 7 years. And then I left in 97, did not graduate, but I moved to Champaign, Illinois, where my sister was in law school, kind of floated around there. And in between there, in 1994, I had a son. I was 22 years old. And 99, I had another son. And then I moved to Champaign, Illinois, and then settled back in Chandler in 2000. I got custody of my oldest son and then met my wife, and my other son who lives in Tucson, and I live up in Gilbert right now. It's just, the journey has been one of those things always seems to really start, of course, when I had my son, but that was the first realization of life. The second realization was in 2000 when I didn't know that you could actually create a business without working a 9 to 5. I was 28 years old, could not believe it when somebody told me about real estate. And I'm like, so I don't have to go to a 9 to 5. I can actually, do something. And it was my introduction into entrepreneurism. So from 2000 to 2007, I was in real estate in Arizona. I mean, I floated around. I just used whatever skills I had in terms of just being able to talk to people. In 2007, I just wasn't inspired. I wanted to do something to where I would at least be able to use my creativity and not just sell something. So I started an online sports radio show with my best friend who I went to U of A with, called Atypical Sports Show. And we got listeners from ESPN, from Twitter and Facebook, and guys who are on like ESPN now, like Bomani Jones, Jamel Hill, people like that on the show were on our podcast back then. And Wow. It's because everything was so accessible. You could really connect with anybody. So, and they would respond, you know what I mean? So in 2009, we're doing that. We're getting listeners from Facebook and Twitter. We're doing topics and everything, but it wasn't enough to get sponsorship. And it was really my passion. So I had to figure out something to do. And at that time, me and my wife got separated. So I had to move to another part in Arizona, in Mesa. And my parents had a mobile home down here. So I moved there, and I had 3 kids under 5. So I had a 5-year-old, a 3.5, and a 2. And I had them half on, half off. And it was one of those realizations where I was like, I'm 37 years old. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So it was one of the darker times, because it's like, I saw all of these choices that I was making, and I didn't really know why I was making the same choices. And all I knew was just to like maybe hope something good would happen. And at that time, it was kind of like that necessity flipped it, where I was like, well, maybe I'll just get some people to do some Facebook updates. So I rode the bus, didn't have a car, got my first client in Chandler. It was a dry cleaner. And I said, for $150, I'll do like posts on Facebook for you. So the guy was like, Caleb Brown, never forget him. He's my guy. We've golfed. And he said, all right, I'll give it a try. So then I was like, all right, this works. So 150 for one client. So I went and found another client in Chandler, Bodacious Creations. They're embroidery screen printing. And this was back in 2009, 10. And I started getting more clients. And then somebody told me about the Chandler Chamber. So then I joined the chamber and started building my business. But as I was building my business, I really realized that my biggest problem was that every time I was trying to grow, I had to take a step back because I didn't have any structure. Then I realized, well, hanging out with the kids, I had to create some type of structure because I had the kids half the time. So I had to like, okay, how can I structure online marketing to where I'm still providing value and it still has that personal touch, but yet it's structured and it's not all over the place? Because everybody back then was like, oh, I just post. Nobody knew what to post. They just thought it was just random stuff. So I just created a strategy and a process to where I had a system to where we would just connect to clients to their best potential client, but we do it really consistently. So I had hired one person. They did everything. It was the best life I could ever live. I was so happy. I was like, this is great. This is great. Then that person left and then it was back to me again. So this happened several times before I realized, oh, maybe if I create a system to where one person manages each channel, I have a project manager, I treat this like a corporation, then if somebody leaves, then I'm not left with the bag again. I can actually still use my strengths to grow. So I did that and things changed immediately. So I started bringing interns under the people who were managing each channel, had them execute our strategy and process, brought a project manager in there. So I grew the Ideate vision to 6 employees. And now I look at the space of I have somebody managing a system and process. So then about 5 years ago, I just said, you know what? I want to do something else. And I said, well, how can I do something else if I don't really have an idea about what I want to do? So I was like, I was always in survival mode. So we'll talk about survival mode a little bit later. I know we're going to talk about it, but I'll skip over that part. I just started a landscape development company because landscaping is one of those businesses that they have no structure and process. And so what I learned in the marketing company is like, oh, structure and process is everything. So I'm bringing that to the landscape world, which makes it really easy to separate yourself. So that's what I decided to do. So now I have a landscape installation company. We do pavers, putting greens, and fake grass. And then I have a project management team behind that. But my passion has really just been in the last 5 years is really doing a lot of speaking. So being able to utilize what my experience is and articulating that in a way to make a difference for business owners. And fast forward to right now to end the story is it really turned out to be COVID was one of the greatest things that happened to me because it really got me thinking about how everything I've done in my business through all the success has been from the perspective of survival. And so when I really understood about, man, I can't create a clear vision if I'm in survival mode. And I never knew how deep it was. And I shared with you, Austin, about the reason why I was so passionate about a lot of things that happened with George Floyd and all that stuff was not what other people were. It's because I know that there's people looking on TV who look at that and are going to go to survival mode. And that to me is genocide. Because if everyone is in survival mode, you're not creating a vision. That's how men die. That's how people die. So think about it's not even black, white, or anything. It's just how many people are in survival mode. And I realized that's what I was in. So I could not create a clear vision. So, I sought counseling, man. I got therapy, talked to a coach, and I was willing to do whatever I could to get out of survival mode. And now to say I'm 100% out of survival mode, that would be a lie. But what I am, if I was 100% before, I'm like 92%. Do you understand how amazing 8% is? Like 8% is an amazing number when we are always on automatic pilot. So think about if I can interrupt that survival way of thinking 8% of the time when I did it 0% of the time and I was not aware, it's transformative. So to me, I was like, well, why would I even talk about anything else? Because I already know that this is what businesses struggle with is structure. And they struggle with what behind the structure is really a clear vision. So if you don't have a clear vision, then how can you implement anything long-term and get people to buy in so that way you can do what you really want, which is scale and retire and be able to use your creativity. you don't want to be running your business that way. So it seems easy enough. Like, why would everybody just create a vision? Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And you can't create a vision if you don't have any idea that you don't need it. So you can only teach what you've been learned yourself. And so that's my roundabout way of bringing it all back to that is my journey to how I got here. So utilizing my relationships and teaching and corporations and stuff, I love teaching about social media. That's fun. That's great for businesses. But ultimately, I feel like I was shafting them, not shafting them knowingly, but I'm putting a Band-Aid on what really the core is. Like, if you're clear about your vision, then everything moves so much efficiently from there. So that's why I would only talk about that now.
Wow, what a journey. And there's so much to unpack there.
Oh.
But something that was standing out to me as you're talking about this is like, I was imagining you like moving up Maslow's hierarchy of
That's
needs
right, me too.
slowly. Yeah. Like, man, you started out in a position where you just needed to provide and do something to, give yourself that structure in life. And then you created that and figured out how you could move up one step and free yourself up from the grindy bits. And then, how do you scale beyond that point? And so I could just see that progression happening. And I love that it was just based in your personal experience too, because I think that journey is a little bit different for everybody, but it's cool to hear somebody like you talk about it, since I think it can help us understand how those little decisions that we make along the way actually impact us in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
And your whole position about vision makes total sense too. And I'm curious, like, vision's like sort of a buzzword, I think, in some ways. People talk about it a lot, but I think that it's usually in vague terms. Mm-hmm. So to you, like, what does vision mean? And specifically, like, what does vision mean tactically, practically? How is vision meant to help us in our business, even just at a high level?
Vision is meant to help us in our business by making it very, if I want to break it down to the animalistic thing, a vision can be your mantra. Okay, so if you're already knowing that you're thinking in a chaotic way, how are you going to break that up if you don't have a clarity of what you want to do? And if you don't repeat that clarity? So I would like to say it was some deep philosophical thing, but literally we're trying to get to the core of what you want to create for your business. And how can you have that be embedded in your soul? And that's what you're talking about. That's what the vision is. So the problem is, or the obstacle is, the vision will require you to have a conversation about what's really going on. That's where the avoidance is. That's why it's so hard. Because it seems to me, if you can ask any business owner, hey man, if you're really clear about what direction you're going and your employees understand that, and in your handbooks have that, do you think that your business will be successful? Hell yeah. But they're the same ones that don't even have that, right? So it's like, well, what are you saying hell yeah for, right? Why is that the case? And it can only be broken down to is those are hard conversations. And so one of the things I do kind of like about breaking down my story, but not really like, is because, dude, there's pain involved in this 15 years story, man. Like, I gave you the 30,000, square foot, 30,000 square foot. See, I'm talking about grass. Dude, that would be a great deal. Anybody got a 30,000 square foot synthetic grass job for me? So what I'm saying is that the overview, yes, that's really the story about what happened. But the work that had to go behind it and the pain that I had to deal with and still deal with to get to where I'm at is why 10% of people make over $100,000, $80,000. Is because the pain of what it is to be an entrepreneur and the stuff that you have to deal with, because it has nothing to do with going to work 9 to 5. That is the stuff that has the successful people be successful because they're willing to deal with those things, or to seek out anyone to help them deal with those things because they know those are the obstacles for them to have what they want, right? To reach their goals. So I'm giving the overview, but to say that I've arrived, I will not say that. I just know that where I'm at, a lot of motherfuckers ain't even there, and they're not there, not saying I'm further, but I'm dealt with other stuff that maybe they haven't been willing to deal with that could bring them to the next level they need to go to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, what we're talking about here is actually like kind of at the core of what we're hoping to take this conversation to, which is this bridge between the ideation of the vision and understanding where we want to go, and then bringing that into reality and actually executing on that vision. And it's sort of a cyclical thing as well. But
just to let you know that you just said the ideation of the vision. My marketing agency is called Ideate Vision.
no, there you go.
So, and this was crazy because I named this marketing agency in 2010 and I wasn't even thinking about anything vision, like not at all. Like I just said, oh, Ideate Vision, like that's because it was idea. And I just said that. So the funny thing that you just said that was pretty awesome.
That's great. It's
nice.
Good language.
Yeah. So I am curious to hear. So like, I think one of the biggest challenges about vision is that I think a lot of, especially speakers, coaches, consultants, experts, generally, we're highly creative people. We have a tendency to look way into the future. And so we have an idea of kind of where we want to go. Now, albeit that idea of where we want to go can be fleeting depending on what catches our attention at any given time. But still, we need to take a vision and we need to be able to execute on it. So I kind of have a two-layered question for you. How do we lock into a vision without that kind of squirrel chasing that might happen? Or is it okay to do some squirrel chasing so long as it fits into the vision? And two, how do we bridge the gap of taking that thing we see that we know we want and actually executing on it to make it happen?
Great question. So the first question, if I understand what you're saying, is like, how do we execute a vision without kind of getting confused?
Yeah, without finding something else that distracts us and then immediately going down another path. Because I find that vision is it needs to be strategic, right? So why a lot of companies have a 10-year, a 3-year, a 1-year type of vision, because it's a plan in order to kind of get there, rather than just saying, I want to go and do this thing. And even tomorrow, what you want to do changes.
Right. Well, so the purpose of a vision is to make sure that you don't go chase squirrels. A vision is like, let's say if you're on a dating app, right? And you have your filter of things you will and will not deal with, right? You run everything through that filter, correct? So if you want someone 5'7", she's 5'5", she's gone, right? It's easier to make a decision when you have clarity, correct? So the vision is meant to do that. So when you have a clear vision, you don't take on and chase all those other things. You just find a whole bunch of things that keep your attention within and align with your vision.
Love that answer.
Second question, what was it?
How to execute on the actual vision. So now you have the idea. How do we hold ourselves accountable to actually go in and do that work? Because we love being in the vision state, but then now we got to get into the grinding state of actually getting it done. So how do we make that happen?
What's great is one of the ways that I go over is like, how do you create your vision? Is like, you're looking for attributes that you love in people, right? So that's one of the questions I ask for how people get clear about their vision is like, well, what are some attributes that you love in your friends or that you love in a coworker? So you start saying those things. What are some of the attributes you love about yourself, and getting clear about those attributes that you like, that resonate with you, that meld into your vision? They might not be that same exact word, but it'll take us on the path to figure out what that is. And so when you're looking to create that vision, those things will be so concrete. It's opposite of what entrepreneurs are. It's actually concrete, very clear and concise, where Rain Man can understand it. Okay, so it doesn't matter who hears it. A third grader can be like, oh, that's what they're doing. That's what they're committed to. That's who they are. So those kind of conversations are really meld within attributes, commitments, and the execution comes from the clarity of those. Does that make sense? A vision is not meant for you to read it over and over again and just lay on your stomach with your hands on your chin and just read your vision and float around. Right. A vision is meant to inspire and give you direction.
Nice.
And if it's not doing that, then it's not a clear vision.
I love that. I think that takeaway right there, you guys, for those listeners, is crucial, because like the reality is, like, when as entrepreneurs, I mean, there's grindy moments where you're just kind of working through it, and we need home base. We have to have something that's like, why are we doing this in the first place? What is making me want to work through this grind right now? I think it's exactly what you highlighted. It's that vision that gives you the inspiration to constantly work through it and go and achieve that thing, regardless of what life might throw at us.
What's interesting, Taylor, is I know people might not believe this, but I'm willing to bet anybody, because I've seen it, I experience it. A clear vision, you will work less. you actually will have less chaos. You won't grind. And if you are, I guarantee you're off your vision.
Sure.
So this is like the ultimate. It's one of those things when you do it, people are always like, why didn't I do this? Because it's the more we think in our head that it's so big and it's like, it's just harder to do it. That's how I am with so many things in my life. It's like, when I'm thinking about it, the more I think about it, the bigger the mountain gets. It's literally like, I can't do. And then when I do it, I'm like, what the hell was I doing? But it's like those things that we look at as being really difficult, those are probably things that we should do, if for anything, to get out of our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Because the comfort zone is one of those, what they call it, one of those symptoms of survival mode.
Yeah.
So
The survival mode. There's that theme again.
Yep. It comes right back around because there's symptoms of it, right? And there's symptoms. If you're doing the same thing every day, if you're grinding, if you're concerned, like shit is going to fall apart. If you think that, man, I've reached my ceiling. If you think that my employees don't really care. If you think all of those things are all survival mode conversations. So that means your vision is not clear.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hear where you're coming from. I think like obviously everybody can be constantly seeking improvement in this area, but I hear what you're saying and I get it. And I also think like, just personally for our own business, there's probably improvement because there are times where things are extremely grindy. And I think like you kind of have to go through the grind sometimes because that tells you, it's like a barometer of what you like doing, what you don't like doing. And it's also a really good indicator of what needs to get offloaded. So, we don't want to stay stuck in the grind, but I think that's the point of the vision, right? It's to help us identify those areas that keep us away from achieving the vision so that we can find a way to get it done without us having to be negatively impacted by it having to get done.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's no shortcut to the experience. Like, I'm not talking to you from somebody from been in business 1 year, like there's no shortcut to understanding really what you will and will not deal with. You're going to go through that, but those circumstances will force most people who are successful that have been forced due to the fact they're just tired of doing that. Okay, we got to do something, So yeah, there's no shortcut to having that experience about finding what works and what does not work.
Yeah. So from your angle, when it comes to crafting a vision, at least one that's going to be useful to us, where do we find the balance between realism and optimism? I think a lot of people want to be very optimistic with their vision, but I feel like there has to be sort of a tipping point where if we don't also believe that it's possible, it's probably not going to be useful. Where's that line in the sand for you?
Man, that is such a good question because I go back and forth with that for me personally is like, I could say I want to make, so I had this, so I'll tell you, I had this mantra that I created. This woman, Florence Scovel Shine, if you've ever heard of her, she wrote a book in the 1920s. So I listened to her on YouTube. It was amazing. So one of the things was she has like this, not mantra, what is it called when you repeat something over and over again? It's your,
I think that's a mantra.
Yeah.
But like it's more of a why can't I think of the word? It's my doggone it. It's gonna come to me. Anyway, so I would repeat it. And one of them was like, I want $2.3 million a month. It's like, yeah, that sounds good. But when I say that, I'm like, yeah, I do, but really do I think I'm gonna be able to do it? So when I had that feeling, it's almost like you have to know it yourself. I don't know if I could get in everyone's mind what I use, because what I use is just kind of like, okay, is this something that pushes me, or is it something that I'm just saying because I don't really want to set myself up to lose, because a lot of the times I don't want to set myself up to lose. So I do something that's low, but ultimately it's not as inspiring either because only I know that it's lower. You know what I mean? But I could do something high that's out of it, like whatever. I'm really not going to do it. That sweet spot is something that I think is going to be have to test and tried for everyone. Because for me, I had to test and try what was there. Realistically, $2.3 million a month is out of my ability to create. But you know what? $100,000 a month isn't.
Sure.
Totally. And so, and I also have to look at it a way is sometimes you have to get the balance between coming up with some number that you see that you could do versus some number that you don't know how you can do it. Get it? Because you're creating a number like, well, if I do this, I do this, I do this, I get this, right? But that's not really what we really want. We want the number that we kind of don't have an idea how we're going to do it. We might have an overall reaching theme, like this is where I want to be, but that's where the vision comes in, because you can really set amazing goals with a vision, because a vision might be clear, but it does encompass that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You just got to be on that edge. It's kind of like that comfort zone edge that people like, the growth edge, as they call it, right? Like riding a roller coaster. Chances are you're not going to die, but it might feel like it. And afterwards, you're going to be fine. So if you stay on that growth edge a little bit in this department, I think that's how we can kind of create a balanced vision between something that's pushing us a bit, but not too overly optimistic or out of what we can create. Am I hearing you right?
Yes, exactly. That's a very good way of explaining it. Thank you, Taylor.
Nice.
Something that I want to point out too, that I think is really cool about what you just said, is that the vision is an iterative process. It's not something that you have perfect right away, and you kind of got to do some testing, and it adapts, because as we grow and evolve, we set new bars for ourselves in terms of what we think that we can accomplish. And I think a lot of people get hung up on this topic because they feel like they need some perfect statement that's going to carry them through any challenges that lay ahead or whatever. But it's never perfect, right? We get as close as we can get, something that's inspiring, but realistic enough that we can work towards it and not feel like it's, impossible. Anyways, I think that process of, testing, setting, testing, I think that's the only way that you can do it, especially as we stretch out a vision over the course of many, many years.
Yeah. And I want to create the distinction that a vision doesn't necessarily mean a goal. A vision and goal are two different things. And that's where sometimes I think that people get caught up, because they get their vision mixed up in their goals. A vision is a structure that's put in place where it's literally inside of you. It inspires you. That's why you're doing what you do. Because while you're doing what you do, it's not really specific, but it's something that empowers that person. That's why the attributes are so important, because the attributes of what you're doing is really why you're doing it. You get the result of money and everything, but there's something within our businesses that we're doing it for other than money. And if we can get that in a clear and concise way, which is the process, like you said, is like, it's the morphing of it, because you just don't know until you know. So that's the process, but that's what we love to do, man. Everything we love is the process, fellas, right? We start our businesses because we love the process of like, dude, something popped in my head. What if we do this? And then it comes to
ideas.
It comes to fruition, and it's so badass. We're like, what? Out of nothing, it came to fruition. Like, that's the reason why we're doing it.
Yeah. It's almost magical at times.
It is.
So it is magical, dude. Like, wait, why isn't it magical? Because magic is when something is not there and then it appears.
That's right.
Right?
More or less.
So if I'm thinking something, it's not there, and then it appears, like, that's magic shit. We create magic.
Heck yeah. No, I love that take. So, okay, I have a rapid fire question for you right now. This is going to be the tactical question of the episode. So, rapid fire. What can someone do right now to build a better vision? What's one thing they can implement, an exercise they can go through to take their vision that they might have, maybe refine it, or start from scratch?
I would say first question I would ask would be, find someone. Okay, so here's what I did. I'll just share what I did.
Sure.
Find somebody who is successful and ask them what their vision, because I guarantee that successful person has a vision. Find someone who's successful, who has a vision. Find the attributes, as I spoke about, 5 attributes that you admire if you were an employee, that you admire in your coworker, and that you admire in yourself. Take 5 of each of those. That's 15 of them. And then whittle them down to 3 things. Once you have 3 things, then I would marry that with the person that you'd either talk to. And then I would really go, honestly, what I would really do, I would really look at, see, that's hard. It's hard because I don't know. My mind is trying to think about, okay, what person would be doing this?
Sure.
Honestly, I would just go speak to somebody. That's what I would
talk to somebody. Sure.
I would talk to somebody, because here's the deal. If you're balking at going to find someone in your industry who is successful, well, then you're in deep shit.
Nice.
Wallace D. Waddle says, and the science of getting rich. He goes, any person trying to do something, I'm paraphrasing this. He goes, if you're trying to do something in a perfect way, just find somebody else who's doing it and just copy them.
That's right.
Don't deviate. Don't say, oh, they do it this way, I do it this way. Just copy them. So if you're looking at someone who is in a certain industry and they are not willing to go and find somebody in the industry who's doing better than them, then they're in trouble. If you are, then I wish you would you're going to do well.
Yeah, kind of ties back to the whole idea of you don't know what you don't know. So if we can find things to model after and rinse and repeat, generally you'll find your way. So love that piece of advice. Robert, this has been an awesome episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. As you know, we're all about creating value for our audience. So what are some of the things you're working on right now that our listeners can benefit from?
Oh man. So I want to build my vision community. And right now I have room for 3 clients to where right now I do vision consulting for a couple title companies, as well as a couple new companies just starting startups. And I love startups because the vision, the desire is there, the willingness to do something different is there. So creating and melding that structure is really important. So yeah, just visit my website, Robert Reed II. So Robert Reed 2, N as in Nancy, D as in dog.com. And you'll see my experience there, organizations I've spoken with. Hit me up. I would love to sit down with you and discuss, what we could do in terms of getting clear on your vision and making sure your vision permeates through your employees and through everyone that you work with. So that way you'll be on the path to scalability and living the life you love.
Heck yeah. All right. Well, those links will be in the show notes, everybody. And hey, if you like this episode, don't forget to rate it, subscribe to it. If you want more awesome resources like this, go to speakerflow.com/resources. Thank you so much for chiming in. I just wanted to take a second to thank our sponsor, Auxbus. Auxbus is the all-in-one suite of tools you need to run your podcast. And it's actually what we run here at Speakerflow for Technically Speaking. It makes planning podcasts simple. It makes recording podcasts simple. It even makes publishing podcasts to the masses simple. And quite honestly, Technically Speaking wouldn't be up as soon as it is without Auxbus. Thank you so much, Auxbus. And if you are interested in checking Auxbus out, whether you're starting a podcast or you have one currently, get our special offer, auxbus.com/speakerflow, or click the link below in our show notes.
Thanks for tuning in today. Check the show notes for more info and see you next time. Later.